Right, let's talk about clueless Clare O'Neil. And today, what about her performance on Sunday Agenda this morning where, I didn't think we were going to lose the court case. Look, it's a 50-50 proposition. The High Court, without boring everyone, is moving a little further to the left. We kind of had a national conversation about that of recent months. And they decided to rule the way they did. It's a 50-50 proposition. Andrew Giles, the Immigration Minister, tried to BS everyone. We've been planning for this for months just in case. No, completely flat-footed. And we saw what happened last week. But what about Clare O'Neil? I mean, she's a national security figure in the country and she's as weak as water, isn't she?
Mate, she doesn't seem to have any idea whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, what staggered me... By the way, you back the High Court decision. It just proves everything Dutton said about the voice. If this stuff got to if there was a High Court decision in relation to the powers of voice, etc., which way would that have gone? She seems to me to be totally out of her depth. She's unconvincing. She spent the last couple of months in the reps just attacking Dutton personally. She's about a length and a half better than Andrew Giles, who's equally unconvincing. And the most staggering thing I've seen in politics for yonks, they've gone round to Dutton's office during the week, 5 of them, and said, let's try and work this out.
Yeah.
I have never heard, ever. I mean, there was the great delegation of 5 or 6 to Robert Ray and others who went round to try and get Bob Hawke to resign the leadership, and he kicked them out.
But you're not the government going, the opposition going, help!
It's not the government going to Dutton and saying help. So for all of the attacks that Clare has been making on Dutton that it was immigration was a shambles under his leadership. Well, hello, if he was so bad, why have they gone round to ask myself? No, look, this is disastrous for Labor. It reinforces every doubt people have about their national security credentials. And a shout out, I might say, to James Patterson, who I think's been fantastic.
How good is he? How good is
Patterson?
It's one of those moments where she's lucky he's upstairs, not downstairs, because he'd be turning her inside out like a pair of socks. Nicholas, rather than telling us how amazing Clare O'Neil is, I want to ask you this question. Strategy time, right? Sunday night, hardcore's watching. I'm looking you eye to eye. You know that Andrew Giles, not amazing on his feet in the Parliament, which means, just as they did to Linda Burney, every question this week, every question, every time they're going to try and turn around, one into him, one into him, one into him, one into him. Now, he's going to be there with his briefing notes. But what does a government do when you've got a minister who might be fantastic with the pen and great behind and factional, all the rest of it, but just not great in that 1 hour that everyone sees if they bother to watch Question Time? How does a government try to protect a bad performer?
Well, I don't accept the premise of the question.
Great performer.
I think both Andrew Giles and Clare O'Neil are 2 of the most talented people in the Parliament. As for Andrew Giles...
Really?
I mean,
we've been watching.
Don't forget Linda Burney.
I'm talking about Andrew Giles and Clare O'Neil. Andrew Giles has forgotten more about immigration and asylum seeker law than you and I probably know. He is an absolute expert in that area. He has been debating that policy field for decades, and it does appear to be the case that the government was genuinely caught flat-footed by that decision this week because it flew in the face of 20 years of legal precedent.
Sure.
Now, in a matter of days, they've managed to cobble together a response package. I do agree with Michael on one point. It looked pretty messy, but obviously making laws is often like that. But by the end of the week, I think they had a sensible, strong set of arrangements in place. And now I think the government will be hoping they can now move forward.
Michael, same question. They're not going to move on because the expectation is that the numbers, which of course were high double digits, could go to triples and we could end up getting plenty more on the other side. If I was either of those ministers, I wouldn't be saying, the worst of it's behind me, I'll all be fine, we'll all be okay. Quite rightly, the Libs are going to go, particularly Giles. Do you think they should or that's last week's issue?
Well, of course they should. I mean, look, Nick's got a bat for his team, but let's be frank. O'Neil and Giles are 9 and 10 batsmen. And they're coming in at 3 and 4, and that's the problem. I mean, Linda Burney is a number 11, who went out with David Warner to open, and you can rotate the strike on the 6th ball occasionally, but those 2 ministers look extremely weak in the Parliament. They've got some very good performance in the reps, I might add, but those 2 are not 2 of them. And with going to Dutton during the week, the whole country has now got the message that Labor don't get this, don't understand this. They're wrong-footed. They're not mudlarks on a wet, in a wet track. They're out of their depth on this issue. The more this keeps going, the worse it'll be for Labor, because this is not Labor territory. This is the coalition's bread and butter: national security, defence, refugees, and this is Albo's worst nightmare.
See, Melbourne is a sporting town. I mean, Michael was able to mention swimming, horse racing, you multiple all in one. It's a very sporting town. But I want to talk
People
about.
can understand.
It was sort of like,
Of course, I can.
it was a wide,
No one understood a word of what Nick was saying.
it was a wide world of sports, of metaphors there.
Yeah, I liked it.
Extraordinary. But look, there's a lot of histrionics and fear-mongering going on around this debate. Let us all agree that the idea of indefinite detention does fly in the face of the idea of the rule of law and the rights of man, something which I think we all
People
stand
have done nothing
for.
wrong. We can have a conversation for a child rapist or a murderer.
And the vast majority, if not close to all of these people in question here, have more than done the time for the crimes that they are alleged to have perpetrated. So if they're Aussies, they'd be out. They'd be free sailing.
But the joy is that they're
because
not,
they're caught
which means you've got to find a way to
in
boot
this gap in the immigration system, it's now being exploited by Dutton to fearmonger.
Okay.